Hello everybody. So last week I did a video on how I had to take it old school because I didn't have any internet. So that got me thinking about when I first started trucking and what it is that the numbers behind it. Now, before I started trucking, I had the mentality that most people have, the dollars per hour. How much do I get paid per hour? Calculate that out, 40 hours a week, and figure my taxes based on that. And I'm going to date myself a little bit here. I apologize. I may use terms that y'all don't understand, but y'all have Google to look it up. And the numbers I'm going to throw out are going to be, well, they're going to tell you how old I am. So when I started trucking, I was making, a minimum wage was about $5, just a little over $5 an hour. 40 hours a week, you could conceivably take home anywhere, based on how many deductions you had, anywhere from $150 to $175 a week after taxes. I know that sounds like an insane amount to live off of, but at the time that was a very doable number with roommates in an apartment and kind of situation. But when I went into trucking, I walked away from everything. I planned to live in the truck, and when I went home for home time, I would just visit family wherever. But when I went into trucking, I still had that by the hours mentality. Now, when I started trucking, you had to go through trucking school. You still have to go through trucking school to get into trucking. No company's gonna work with you unless you've come out of an accredited school. Several companies have their own trucking schools that they sponsor, and the trade-off is they'll pay for the school, but you have to work for them for a certain time period. We call those starter companies, and they pay crap, generally speaking. But you got to serve your time. You got to work your way up. When I started I wasn't looking at how much I get paid per mile after training. I was looking at how long was the contract, because I knew that whatever company I went to, they were going to abuse me, or not abuse me, but they were going to use me as much as they could, because I was cheap labor, because I didn't have any experience. And I knew that going in. But they told me they'd be, the company I went with had a 9-month contract. If you went to school and worked for them for 9 months, you didn't have to pay for the school, and you could quit and go to another company. So what I did based my decision on was that length of contract, not how much I'd get paid after school. There were contracts out there that were up to 3 years. I was not willing to commit to 3 years to one company as a starter company to get my license. Okay, so I went with the shortest one. The one I found was 9 months. Now, they don't even have the school anymore. It's closed down, so it doesn't matter. Even if I told you, you wouldn't be able to find it, so it doesn't matter. But 9 months, and after that, I could move ahead into a mid-level company, because I would have had my 6 months experience, and work for them until I get to my 1 year and get with a decent company at 1 year. Now, the company I'm at right now requires minimum 2 years. But again, that's something you have to work your way up to. Now, I've got way more than 2 years, but let's go back to the beginning. So at they were paying me 22 cents a mile. And with my hourly mentality, I thought, I did the math thinking what I was going to be making a week. And I figured since the trucks go 65, I could probably average 60 miles an hour. I wasn't allowed to work more than 70 hours a week, so I figured I'd be doing 60 hours of that driving. That's 3,600 miles per week at 22 cents a mile. And I did the math. If you want to pull out a calculator, you can do it, but I've already done it. That's $792 per week. That is a huge difference, but above $200 a week. So I was stoked. I thought, okay, this, 22 cents a mile, I'm going to be making bank, and I don't have any bills because I'm going to be living in the truck. That was the wrong mentality. Okay, 22 cents a mile, you don't calculate based on what you can do, because there's no way, with traffic slowdowns, with weather slowdowns, with construction slowdowns, accidents, breakdowns. There's things that are going to slow you down. There's no way to consistently maintain 3,600 miles a week. There are some weeks where I do 3,600 miles a week, but based on the experience that I've come across, if a company's not running a truck 2,500 miles a week, they're losing money on it. So whenever I do my calculations now, I do the miles per hour, or miles, I do the cents per mile at 2,500 miles an hour, or 2,500 miles per week, as my low end. Now my mid level is 3,000 miles per week. That's pretty steady. That works out to 500 miles a day, 6 days a week, which is really, really easy to do. 3,500 miles is a good week. So at 22 cents a mile, 2,500 miles a week, that's still $550 per week, which was double what I was working at minimum wage. And again, no expenses. I would be living in the truck, eating out on the road, doing my laundry out on the road. I didn't even have to buy laundry machines or anything like that. Just, live in the truck, which is doable at 22 cents a mile 22 years ago, almost 23 years ago. Okay. At that point, it was doable. Now it's not doable. 22 cents a mile. You never hear that anymore, unless you're talking about somebody who's old school, because at 22 cents a mile, I didn't have to worry about a cell phone. They didn't have them, or no, they were just getting car phones, but car phones were for CEOs and entrepreneurs and people in illegal business enterprises. They had mostly it was pagers and payphones. And no, I'm not going to tell you what those are. If you don't know what they are, look them up. So that's kind of how the world was back then. If I needed to stop and if I needed to contact work, I would have to stop, get in the line at the truck stop for the payphone. Usually it was about an hour long to get to the payphone. I dial my toll-free number that I had memorized, because people actually memorized phone numbers back then. And then they, if I was calling for a load, they say, we don't have anything for you yet, call back in an hour. So you could go to the end of the line, get back in line. By the time you got back up to make your phone call again, it would have been an hour. And this is the way the industry was before technology. There was, you had phones at the tables, you had, or at the restaurant, but you had to be eating. So you couldn't just station at the table for the payphone or for that phone. You ended up waiting in line with the payphones, and the laundromats at the truck stops and the showers at the truck stops. They're all accessible for truck drivers. They were there for truckers. Anyway, so at 22 cents a mile, even at $550 a week, that was a doable number. On a good average week, 22 cents a mile works out to $660 a week. Now, $600 a week, that's $15 an hour. That's what everybody's shooting for, that's arguing that minimum wage isn't sustainable. $600 a week is, at this point in time, barely livable. But 22 years ago, that was bank. I was making good money. I stayed there for the time period I was required. I went to another company, got my 1 year. Well, at the time I got my 1 year, I went to another company. I was making 32 cents a mile. I went 10 cents a mile increase. And there was bonuses on top of that they'd say, safety bonus or fuel mileage bonus or whatever. I never calculated the bonuses. I never depended on that, because my philosophy is it's not guaranteed pay. I'm not guaranteed to get it, and they're going to try and screw me out of it every single time. So I don't count on it. But at 32 cents a mile, 2,500 miles a week, that's $800 a week, versus $550. So at that point, I was actually got an apartment, started to settle down. I could actually afford to live outside the truck when I was on home time. And that's minimum week, average week, 960. Now, again, this is 20 years ago. Trucking pay has increased, but not at the rate. It's the pay is increased slowly, and I have a feeling it's about to boom again because there's such a shortage of drivers right now after the pandemic. So I have a feeling that it's going to boom. But right now, 50 cents a mile is average. It's not the highest, it's not the lowest, and it's an easy number to do math on. So 50 cents a mile. That's not even what I make, but it's less than what I make. But 50 cents a mile for general math purposes, okay? Right now, 50 cents a mile at 2,500 miles a week is $1,250 a week. Now, there are some companies that have started to do salaries or minimum pay, and usually their minimum pay, it's if you work all week, it doesn't matter what your miles are, you're going to be making $1,200 or $1,400 or whatever the miles is per week. There are some companies that are starting to do salaries. In the oil fields, for example, when I was working the oil fields, I didn't get paid by the mile at all. I got paid a flat salary of $1,500 a week. And they used me when they needed me, and I was available on the phone when they didn't need me. So pay varies depending on the different markets within trucking. Okay, but at 50 cents a mile, 2,500 miles, that's $1,250. 3,000 miles, that's $1,500 a week. That is fairly average week. Now, I have done some kick butt weeks since the pandemic, especially when there was no traffic. I could get serious miles. And so I'm seeing anywhere from 3,200 to 3,500 miles a week right now. And at 3,500 miles a week, that's $1,750 at 50 cents a mile. So trucking is, it's a good job. It is a good career. It's a good lifestyle. Next week, I'm going to talk about the cost and what this $1,750 every week has to get me in trucking expenses and stuff like that. So stay tuned. We'll talk about the cost of trucking next week, unless anybody has any other suggestions. Now, if you like my content, go ahead and subscribe, like, comment. Comment on anything that you would like for me to cover, and I will talk to you next week.